I've been with my boyfriend for 11 years, since I was 15. His mother has hated me since the first day she met me. She hated me due to my ethnicity, Kosovan Albanian. She hated me due to my career. I work as a model, and she decided that makes me an empty-headed, vain, shallow person. Then when I told her I still planned to go to university alongside my career, she said I was doing it to impress my boyfriend. I've since left uni with a distinction, and her new reason to hate me is I try too hard. She has also insisted I've cheated on him throughout our entire relationship, which is a ridiculous claim. I've never even kissed another man in my whole life. I have zero desire to cheat and never will. Late last year, she attempted to void the insurance on my boyfriend's motorbikes. She tried to do this under my name, so hypothetically, when he was arrested for riding with no insurance and called his insurance company, I'd get the blame. After this happened, my boyfriend and I agreed to cut her out. However, it hasn't stuck. She left my boyfriend alone and respected his wishes for NC, but she's continued to contact and harass me. This leads to the last few weeks. My boyfriend works as a motorcycle test rider, and he got in an awful motorbike crash while working. As such, I now need to care for him. I'm okay with that, and I'm focusing on seeing it as an opportunity for us to get closer. It's been nice, honestly. However, his mother has been awful to me. She's called me litany of terms. From things as tame as stupid to things as awful as a nasty Serbian half-breed. I'm not Serbian, and she's well aware that calling a Kosovan a Serb is offensive. I tried to block her, so she started making new iMessage accounts and began to continuously harass me via those accounts. Then came Friday night. The police turned up at our door. I was pretty confused and was quickly told they were there to do a welfare check as they'd received multiple claims of horrific abuse I was apparently putting my poor boyfriend under. Obviously, they quickly discovered he was fine, albeit grumpy, and they left. I know for a fact it was his mother. Some of the details the police mentioned made that obvious. I'm now at a point where I've realized I literally cannot do this. I'm going to press charges against her for the insurance and harassment. It's a crime in the UK. And I'm likely going to sue her for damages. For the sake of my mental health, I need to do this. I don't want to be a victim, and she needs to be forced to stop. I have mentioned my intentions to her if she doesn't back off, and she's pretty much mocking me and saying I won't. I absolutely will. I just feel like this morally may make me an awful person. She sucks, I know this. However, she's old and miserable enough as is, and I feel like doing this may ruin whatever small amount of life she has left. It feels like it may be too far. I really don't know though, and I genuinely cannot be objective here. I own a small condo in Orlando. I bought it while working for the Mouse, and my friend Ben lived there with me. Ben's a cook and is rarely home. He has a large room that is accessible from outside and attached bathroom that locks to the rest of the house. Well, I got a different job, got engaged to my partner, and moved a few hours away. We kept the condo as a place to stay when we visit the parks. And we agreed with Ben that he could continue living there as long as he paid all the utilities and maintained the place. Our friends use it too. They pay a bit for utilities, are told don't bother Ben, and clean before they leave. Between everyone who uses it, we've gotten stuff donated, so it's now a fully stocked vacation home. My immediate family and I have a bad history, but we mended. They've used the condo 3/4x a year. On Monday, Ben got woken up at 2 a.m. by hammering on the main door. My aunt and uncle, their kids, and their grandkids were all there waiting to be let in. I haven't spoken to these people in years after they decided I was the devil's spawn for being gay. They demanded that the caretaker give them the keys. Ben called me. I told him to give them my number, then shut and lock the door and not let them in. My aunt was insistent that my condo was actually owned by my family. It was the family vacation home. And it was against the law to not let them in. I told her no, it was mine, I own it and I let friends and family use it, but I choose who stays there. There was a lot of back and forth and some petty name calling. She said they were here for a week, where were they supposed to go, and I said I don't care. Meanwhile, my partner reported that Ben texted them saying my uncle was attempting to kick in the door. I said tell him to call the police. She hung up on me and Ben said they left. In the morning I got a phone call from my mom trying to convince me to let them stay. We had an argument during which she admitted that she didn't tell people that I owned the property, because she didn't want the rest of our family to know they were in contact with me again. I told her if that's how she wants our relationship to be, then she's no longer welcome. I checked in with Ben and he's okay. Today my aunt sent several texts asking to stay at the house because they hadn't accounted having to pay for a hotel, and they had planned to just buy groceries and use the kitchen. I told her no. She said they were about to be out on the street with their luggage. She called me cruel and heartless and that I was ruining Disney for the kids. That made me hesitate, probably because I worked for the mouse. I know that particular family line has very little money. Yet I find it hard to believe someone would plan a whole vacation without accounting extra funds for it. But the kids are really young. I'm so furious over the homophobia that it feels like a point of pride to deny them access. My husband and I come from the same background. The only difference is that his mother isn't of that ethnicity, so he wasn't raised in the culture like I was. When we started dating, I helped him reconnect with his roots. This eventually led to him reaching out to his estranged father's family and becoming close with them. I think my mother-in-law has sort of held that against me ever since. Throughout the course of our relationship, she has made multiple comments about how she doesn't like the amount of emphasis I put on my heritage. When we told her I was pregnant with twins, she later said something about not wanting her future grandchildren to care about that stuff like I do. I've learned to ignore her comments because trying to explain myself to her has never helped. And I try to avoid conflicts whenever I can. My husband and I decided that the babies would have a first name from our culture, and their middle name would be a typical American name. My parents did the same thing with my name too, so it was just a continuation of that tradition. My mother-in-law ended up seeing texts between me and my husband where we said the middle names. But she assumed that we were talking about first names, so she went out and got the babies matching sweaters, with the names printed on the front of them. She showed the sweaters to me after they arrived. And I thanked her for the gift but didn't correct her on the fact that those were the middle names. I was sort of peeved that she had snooped through text messages to try to find out the names before we told her anyway. So I didn't want to give her their first ones on top of that. Last night when she was over at our house, she told me how relieved she was that we had chosen normal names for her grandchildren, and not a ridiculously difficult to pronounce name like mine. My husband asked what she was talking about. She repeated herself and he told her that actually, the babies did have names just like mine and he expected her to learn to say them. She brought up the text messages and the sweaters she bought, and then my husband explained our plan for their names. She got really pissed at me after that. Said I let her look like a fool for accepting the sweaters instead of telling her the actual names, which we still haven't shared with her, and that she'd be calling them by their middle names since that's what she knows them as now. My husband ended up asking her to leave. And after she was gone he said he wasn't upset at me or anything, but that he thinks I should have just told her she had the wrong info, instead of lying. Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin. Though when he made more I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount and I didn't want to be braggy about it, especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place, and in the process of having to submit our pay stubs it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career. But instead he started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am. That no English Lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister, but it was for non-profit work making $22K year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity //equity / inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it. Especially since I grew up blue-collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new / first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen and we haven't really talked since yesterday.